American Flight 896. The mysterious vanishing and the secrets of the unknown. Prologue. A routine flight. On the morning of September 17, 2022, American Airlines Flight 896, a modern Boeing 777-300ER, prepared for its routine journey from New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport to Los Angeles. The aircraft was fully booked, with passengers from across the globe, all eager to reach their destination. The flight was piloted by Captain Michael Andrews, an experienced aviator with over 20 years of flying experience, and First Officer Olivia Parker, who had recently completed her training as the airline's youngest pilot to earn a commendation for her skills. As the aircraft ascended, the skies were clear and weather conditions were optimal for a long-haul flight. The cabin crew made their final checks. Passengers settled into their seats, and the plane soared over the Atlantic, heading westward. With over 10 hours of flying ahead, everything seemed normal, until the unexpected happened. The unseen event, a sudden disruption. Midway through the flight, something inexplicable occurred at an altitude of 3,500 feet. Flight 8096, cruising comfortably above the Midwest, suddenly deviated from its flight path. At 3:07 p.m., Captain Andrews made a standard transmission to air traffic control, confirming the current position and altitude of the aircraft. But then, something went wrong. The aircraft's trajectory became erratic. Air traffic control tried to contact the flight crew, but the radio transmission was cut off. There was a brief, disturbing silence before the plane vanished from radar screens. The controllers, baffled and concerned, dispatched emergency protocols, dispatching military aircraft to try and locate Flight 896. However, all attempts to communicate with or locate the plane. The initial search and the chilling discovery. As the hours turned into days, a massive search operation was launched, spanning across the United States and into international airspace. The search involved Coast Guard vessels, military surveillance aircraft, and even private search teams. Despite the vast resources dedicated to finding the missing flight, nothing was found. No wreckage, no distress signals, and no sign of the aircraft. The disappearance was not just an aviation mystery. It was a nightmare. Weeks later, the search was called off. Families and friends of the missing passengers were left with no closure, and the story began to fade from the headlines. The world was left to wonder what had happened to Flight 896. Then, in early November, a discovery emerged that would shake the world to its core. A distress signal was picked up by a satellite surveillance network. The signal was faint, but it seemed to originate from a location in the South Pacific, thousands of miles from where the plane had last been tracked. Government officials scrambled to organize an expedition, but the true nature of the signal was far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. The journey to the unknown, exploring the anomaly. The team that was dispatched to investigate the signal was led by Dr. William Hawke, a renowned physicist specializing in quantum anomalies and theoretical physics. Alongside him were military personnel, rescue workers, and aviation experts. What they found on a seemingly uninhabited island would alter the course of their investigation and history forever. Upon landing, the team discovered a massive, disheveled piece of wreckage lying on the island's shore. It was unmistakably part of Flight 896, a section of the plane's fuselage with its identifying markings visible. The wreckage was remarkably intact, considering the distance it had traveled from its last known location. But there was something wrong about it. As the team scoured the island for additional debris, they found something even more shocking. Inside the wreckage, there were no bodies, no passengers, and no crew. The plane's interior, though damaged and weathered by time, was eerily empty. The food trays were still neatly in place, the seats untouched, and the overhead compartments sealed. There was no sign of any struggle, no blood, no sign of distress, just an unnerving silence. The team began to question whether they had stumbled upon a simple case of a crashed plane or something far more sinister. Dr. Hawk theorized that they had encountered something extraordinary, a rift in time or space, an anomaly that had allowed Flight 896 to slip through into another dimension. The hypothesis, a rift in time. As the investigation deepened, Dr. Hawk's hypothesis began to take shape. The rift, or anomaly as they called it, was not simply a glitch in the fabric of the atmosphere. Rather, it was a tear in the very fabric of reality itself. The missing plane, in Hawk's theory, had passed through this rift, leading it into an alternate dimension, a parallel world where time and space behaved unpredictably. The satellite signal, it turned out, was not a distress call from the plane, but rather a faint echo of the plane's crossing. In this alternate dimension, the aircraft was not destroyed, but somehow suspended in time and space, neither fully here nor there. With further analysis of the wreckage, it became clear that the plane's journey was not a random event. The anomaly seemed to have been triggered by an electromagnetic disturbance, an area of intense magnetic and gravitational forces, perhaps an unintended side effect of a covert government experiment. The theory emerged that an experimental device designed to manipulate quantum fields may have unintentionally opened a rift, sending Flight 896 into an unknown dimension. The struggle for survival, trapped in another world. If the passengers and crew of Flight 896 had indeed crossed into a parallel universe, where were they? And were they still alive? The investigation led to the discovery of an old journal hidden within the wreckage. It was the personal log of Captain Michael Andrews, who had written entries in a panic describing their experiences in the strange world they had encountered. According to Andrews' journal, the flight crew had initially thought they had experienced a mechanical malfunction or a catastrophic event when they first lost contact with air traffic control. But as the plane drifted, they encountered bizarre phenomena, sky patterns that didn't align with the usual laws of physics, inexplicable shifts in time, and even glimpses of unfamiliar landscapes outside their windows. Passengers reported seeing things, distorted shadows, flashes of light, and even hearing disembodied voices. In his last entry, Andrews described the crew's decision to abandon the aircraft in an attempt to reach a location that seemed to pulse with energy. It was a last-ditch effort to escape the strange dimension and return to the real world. But there were no further entries. The journal ended abruptly, with only a cryptic message. "We are lost, and it may be too late." The legacy of Flight 896. As the investigation came to a close, the world was left with more questions than answers. The U.S. government issued a statement claiming that the wreckage was an isolated incident and that the circumstances surrounding Flight 896's disappearance were the result of a series of unfortunate events. But there were whispers in scientific communities and conspiracy circles suggesting that the government had known more than it was willing to admit. Despite this, the tragic disappearance of Flight 896 became a symbol of mankind's fragile grasp on reality. It sparked renewed interest in the study of parallel universes, time anomalies, and the potential dangers of experimental technology. It reminded humanity of the vast unknowns that still lurk beyond the limits of our understanding. The passengers and crew of Flight 896, it seemed, had crossed into the unknown, never to return. But the rift in time and space, once opened, remained. And as long as it existed, there were whispers that others, perhaps even entire cities, could one day slip through, lost forever in the shadow of dimensions yet unexplored.